Hello everyone, I'm Barbi Leo. Welcome to our 3 News Plus app, and today I'm talking to Grammy Award winner Jojo Garza, one of the Garza brothers from the Lonely Boys. Jojo, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
So I need to ask you, how old were you when you started singing and playing an instrument, playing the bass?
Well, I didn't start on the bass. Our dad was primarily a guitar player, and so we all learned how to play guitar. And I guess when I started learning, I was probably around, 5, 6 years old or something like that. But the story is that Henry wrote his first song when he was 4 years old, and so he was playing. He was obviously playing before me because he got here, a year or two before me, and so. But when I started playing the bass, I was around 9 or 10 years old.
Now, I know that you mentioned your dad. Tell us more about your dad and his musical background, because I know it's your dad, not only your dad, your mom, but even your uncle. He played with La Mafia too. Tell us all about that.
Well, yeah, our dad grew up in South Texas, and he learned from the story was is that he learned from his grandpa, and I forget who he said his mom's cousin was. Man, I don't want to say the wrong name, but apparently he had a cousin that was like one of the charros back in the old days, and well, at least it was his mom's cousin. And then he started playing in the band with his brothers called Lupe Garza y Los Falcones, and they kind of pretty much hit the conjunto circuit there for a while. They were on Johnny Canales, and they recorded it was Joey Records at the time, and so they did pretty good for themselves at that time. It was, I believe, it was like the late '60s and '70s and some of the '80s, but our mom was a really great singer, great dancer, and her dad and her brothers, both brothers, they had a band called Los Hermanos Villanueva, and so both our uncles were in the band. Our Tio Jenner played the bajo sexto, and then our Tio Speedy, he played the bass, but he's the one that went off and became one of the founding members of La Mafia. And if you know anything about Tejano music, you know who Speedy is because he played with, like I said, he started with La Mafia, but then he went with Excelencia, and then he played with Albert Tiger Diaz and Jay Perez, and I mean there was really nobody he didn't play. He played with everybody, and so music was a big part of our family, a really big part of our family.
So, growing up, besides Mexican music, conjunto music, tejano playing in the background, what other kind of music did you listen to at home?
Well, our dad was introducing us to the things that he was really, really turned on by. And, I can remember being 6 years old, 7 years old. Of course, we were singing La Bamba, and we were singing some of the traditional stuff at home. But he was showing us things about Willie Nelson, and he was showing us stuff about Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cash. And there was also his biggest influence was Ronnie Millsap, but he taught us about the Beatles and Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry, and I mean the list goes on. All the classics you could think of in rock and roll and country. We knew who Conway Twitty was. We knew who Johnny Rodriguez was, and there's just so many names. He had showed us a lot more ropes than just our traditional heritage, music. And so, for that, we're really grateful. At that time when he was going through it too, his brothers and a lot of people were looking at him kind of strange because it wasn't the way that things were going for our people. You had to play Mexican music and you had to speak Spanish, and if you kind of veered off into rock and roll or into you know the roots, the Americano or whatever, you got treated a little different. And so he showed us early that it didn't matter what anybody said, and you just do what you do, and like it, for us, we throw a little bit of the Mexicano music, in there, the conjunto, and yeah, when we're playing live, sometimes depends on where we're at, but that's definitely what our roots are based off of: rock and roll and country.
All of that has definitely helped shape your unique sound, like you mentioned before, Mexican music, pop, rock, country, all of that. Talk to us about the first time that you were on stage. The first time y'all were on stage professionally, you were with your dad, right?
Well, they say that if you get paid for something, you're a professional, and so yeah, you can. You know, we were already on stage helping pay some of the bills when by the time I was 9 years old, 10 years old, um, and so that was really our way of doing things. You know, our dad had some jobs growing up as we were growing up. I remember him being a carpenter, and I remember him working at a convenience store, and you know, he was a jack of all trades, master of none, and he passed that down to us as well. Um, but we've been pretty much professional since we were since around 1990, and playing everywhere we could just to help pay the bills, just so we could have some frijoles and tortillas right there on the plate.
Hey, you can't go without frijoles and tortillas. I don't care where you're at in your life. I want to
No,
talk,
no,
no, not at all. Tell us more about the struggles, making a name for yourselves as Los Lonely Boys. Tell us how y'all came up with that name, Los Lonely Boys, and the struggles y'all had to have that to make a name for yourself in this in the music career, in the music business.
Well, I kind of spoke about it a little bit by saying that we played, with our major influences and roots were in rock and roll and country, and the música mexicana was there too. And but the struggles that came along with what we do or what we were doing were basically that at that time in our lives, it was late '80s, early '90s, and then on through. We experience, and we don't like to talk about it much because we like to try to talk about positive things and spread positive messages. But it's no secret that racism and things like that exist. And, a lot of the honky tonks we played and a lot of the dives we played, we got looked at and we got called names, and it didn't stop until the moment that we started playing something like, Folsom Prison Blues or You're Cheating Hard or something like that, because those were a lot of the places we were playing. And so we experienced a lot of that at a very early age. The struggles we saw too were not having I guess what some people would call a steady house, or for us, we were basically nomads and just moving around everywhere we could find a place to play, and we'd live at some place for a while, and then move to another house, and you know um, using the word struggles for any of that, really, at this age where I'm at now, it's not really. I don't really look at it like that. But I mean, for young kids to be out there doing it like that, it does seem like a struggle. But honestly, Los Lonely Boys wouldn't be who they are without those things. And it is those types of things in anyone's life that help shape what we become as people. Now, it doesn't you know it's not the final straw, if you will, of who you become or what you become or anything like that. But it definitely showed us that nothing was handed to you or to us, and at this, like I said, at this point in our lives, and even then, I mean, we embraced it. We embraced it, with the Chicano heart and the Chicano spirit, and that's what we would say at that time. And it was just the way of life. It's just the way we lived. We saw life firsthand. Our dad didn't hold any blankets over our eyes. We saw what people were like. We saw what people could be like, and we saw a lot of sad things. We saw a lot of happy things. The name Los Lonely Boys came from. It was around, I believe it was around 1990. We played a place here in San Angelo, and our dad had mentioned that if we really wanted to play music and we were going to really try to do it, that we needed a band name, and we were coming up with a bunch of different names, and Ringo blurted out Los Lonely Boys, and our dad had written us a song that was called The Lonely Boy, uh, and if I'm not mistaken, Ringo kind of had that in his head, and our dad was always talking about being the lonely boy, even in his family and stuff, and so it just seemed fitting. It's kind of funny these days. People be saying things like, "Are you guys really lonely?" and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, honestly, when you leave home, there's a sense of loneliness there. And when I say I leave home, I'm talking about when we leave our house, when we leave our wives and kids and things like that. Because the way Los Lonely Boys see it, we have houses, but the world is our home.
I absolutely love that. I'm glad that you're sharing. I know that you don't call it struggles, but the stuff that you went through, the lessons that you've learned on the road. For those that are listening, especially the young ones that maybe want a career in music or whatever career that they may have, they need to understand that there's struggle everywhere, and it's how you react to that struggle. And I'm hoping that them
That's
listening to
absolutely
you,
true. Absolutely true.
right? It's
I mean,
and I'm
if I got to give any advice for somebody that wants to get into the music business, I'm gonna say don't,
right. I mean, it's
because
not
it's not all
it's not
glitz and
easy.
glamour.
It's
It's
not
not all
easy.
Grammys and But honestly, no. In serio, I mean that's semi joke. But if anybody's out there and you just got to stick to it. It doesn't matter what it is you're doing. You just got to stick to it. You got to push through it, and you're gonna achieve the goals. You're gonna achieve them if that's something you really want to do.
And you have that support. I know that you mentioned, your family, your kids, and your wives. Those, they're part of this as well. It's a struggle for them.
A
Y'all
huge part.
been on the road, and it's a lot. But I believe that part of your magic, you and your brothers, that has allowed you to reach the level of success that you have, is the chemistry that you guys have, that brotherhood. That tight bond that y'all have as brothers. Not only being in business together, being on stage together, doing all these decisions. That takes a lot, especially when a lot of family members nowadays, they don't even get along. How do you do that? What's your secret as far as for your family and your family values?
Well, even as a solo, like if we're by ourselves anywhere, even just one of us, men that have the type of faith that we have, you're never alone. But knowing that we're there with each other even really removes that even more so, because we're there with each other. And I mean, we're like anybody else. We're brothers. We're familia. We've definitely had our moments. We've had our fights and our arguments and whatnot. But we learned to overcome those things. And I believe having the same. I don't want to use the word passion, but having the same, uh, idea in mind of what we would like to achieve. I think that really helps remove a lot of the things that create tensions and whatnot. Now, don't get me wrong, we've gone through it. As you know, we got off the road in 2019. We were all kind of tired, and it just felt like it was just time to kind of bring things to a halt. But you can see right now in 2025, Los Lonely Boys are back at it, and we're still at it. We put out our new album called Resurrection. We put that out last year in August, and we're really pleased with the work. It's some of our best work to date, and you know being together is there's nothing like familia. You hear a lot of people talking about how you can't work with family and stuff like that, and to some degree that is true. But for Los Lonely Boys, the brothers, it's that's definitely not true at all for us three.
I know that you brought up faith earlier, and I'm glad that you did because I was going to ask you about that. A couple of your songs that come to mind. The first one, of course, is "Heaven." That's what earned you guys a Grammy. To me, that sounded like a prayer. And even the song "Send More Love," that also it's like you're praying. Who wrote those songs? Give us a background on those songs as well, please.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you know those stories. They're all over the place. Uh, there's songs that were written by Henry, and then we all get together and kind of finish them up and whatnot. But you know, when I say our faith, really what I'm talking about is believing in something greater than ourselves. There's a lot of people out there that they have, religions and things that they believe, and I'm not here to knock anybody's beliefs. I just think that if you believe that there is something in existence that is greater than your own existence, I believe that sets you apart from the ones who don't believe such things. And for us, it's knowing that we have a job to do, and the only reason we have purpose is because of that creator, and knowing that the purpose was never ours and is never going to be ours. And in a sense, you have to. It's kind of tough sometimes, especially when we're sitting here talking about Los Lonely Boys, which is my brothers and myself. But at some point in your life, you have to learn to you have to really try to remove yourself from the equation of what is existence, and it becomes this whole I thing and me and stuff. Sort of has to be, put dampered on, and it has to be sort of slightly removed so that the greater thing, the greater I exists and shines through. And songs like the Heaven and Sin More Love are only two that people recognize as something like that. But I'm telling you, and I tell everyone the same thing. Every song of Los Lonely Boys is that. Even though some may talk about, like a song like Dance With Me may talk about, hey, we're let's be together, you and me, baby, and whatnot. But if you have any kind of belief in what the Creator has given us as human beings, you know that man and woman are perfect opposites, and but they're also the exact same. And so that the dance of life is something that is just as pure as crying out to how far is heaven, or send me more, or send us more love, for things like that. Painted Memories, songs like Natural Thing. When you listen to lyrics like that, and it says, don't ask me why the stars come out at night, don't ask me why the sun shines oh so bright. Those types of things, you know, the Father I speak of, the Creator I speak of, isn't something that's bound by a church or a book. Because when you look out, like where I'm at right now, we're out here. I'm out here at the pond, hanging out with the fish and the trees and the birds, and that's a lot closer to the Creator than a building, or than a few pages in a book.
I love that. And
And
I want to
and I
ask
think that
you.
our music, I believe and I feel that our music, it represents that, because it's not really about us.
I want to ask you, when the moment that you all knew, man, we made it. Maybe it was the first time you heard your song on a radio or something. Where were you at? Share with us that moment when you all said, "Oh my goodness, we have made it. We are here."
That's funny. I mean, a lot of people have said that kind of to us and like asked us, but really what it took was like our mom and our dad and our brother, our sisters, and our family, cousins and everybody, even friends. What it really takes is them telling us something like that, because for us, we don't really recognize that. I mean, you recognize the fluctuation of income and maybe where you stay at or whatever, but to say that we made it is, in a sense, it's sort of self glorification, and we're not about that. And so we require someone else to kind of, from the outside looking in, to tell us such things. Um, but I can remember the first time we really heard our song, like for reals on the radio. And I know we were driving into Austin to a gig, and we had just been listening to it because we received word that they might be playing our song. And well, sure enough, we got right outside of Austin in like a Dripping Springs or Pedernales area, and on came Heaven, and we literally pulled over, right there, not in the middle of the road, but we pulled over there next to each other, and we just had the stereos blasting, and we were crying and hugging and jumping around and going like, man, our song's on the radio, man. It's like, but to say that that was the moment that we made it, I don't really remember that. I do remember saying we made it on the radio.
Well, I love to hear that. The joy that y'all had. I can visually see y'all coming out and jumping and yelling. What about when you won the Grammy? Tell us how you
Yeah. You
felt. And,
remember
and
on you remember on Selena, whenever it was like it got kind of like echoey and like quiet and like slow motion. That's like one of the best ways to describe it. Like they really, I don't know how they got that information about what it felt like for her or whatever, but it was very similar to that for us. And we've all talked about that. What we do remember is that out of all the people in the audience that night, there was one person that stood up immediately, and that was our dad.
oh,
And even though he was standing up, and there's pictures on the internet, you can find that, where he's standing up and he's got his hands in the air and he's just like, yeah, and all lit up. And even though he stood up, we didn't know why he was standing up.
y'all
Because
hadn't
for
heard
us,
your
we
name.
were,
Like you hadn't heard your name,
well,
but
see,
he
that's what
did.
I'm trying to tell you, is that like at that moment, yeah, we heard them say something that sounded like Los Lonely Boys. But inside, neither one of us three believed for a second that was going to happen. I mean, we were up against some pretty major artists for that, for that Grammy, and so we were just felt lucky enough to be like nominated or whatever. And so when they said Los
Lord.
Lonely Boys, and we're looking at each other literally,
Wow.
going like, "Did they? No, did they?" We look at our dad, and he's already up, and then we look. I remember looking across the aisle, and I saw Faith Hill and Tim McGraw and Beyonce and Jay-Z. They were all like, "Get up, y'all won!"
They're telling you, come
And I
on
was
now.
like, and if you watch the replay of it, you can see it on at least one of our faces going like,
Is it
"Is this
happening? Is
some
this
kind of a
happening?
joke?" Like,
Oh, wow.
you don't want to stand up when somebody didn't call your name.
It just shows how
It was a
humble you
magical
guys are.
moment.
It is. It sounds like a magical moment. I'm glad, and thank you for sharing that moment with us because I know as a parent, I'm there for my daughter regardless, right? So I can only picture your dad being there from the moment that you first started on stage, right there, watching you, right, watching you, grow up
Oh
on
yeah,
stage,
absolutely.
and then
Well,
watching
I
you
mean, there since
win the
birth,
Grammy.
since the day we were born, really.
Gosh, just I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what went through
I
his
really don't
head.
even know. Like, I remember going like, why are they even inviting us to this thing? Like, I mean, it's cool to go hang out, but I don't know. I don't know if some people know before or whatever, but they got us over there. You can see all the pictures. We're all decked out in our suits and our Stacey Adams, and it
You
was
know,
one heck of a moment. But another thing we like to tell people is, it was never about that for us. It really was never about that. But to experience it and to be on that stage where in this industry, it's the same in the movies, it's the same as doctors and lawyers, and you receive awards to show the that the hard work has paid off, and that's something we'll never forget. If it happens again, that's going to be really awesome too. But if it never does again, we can say we did it once.
I'm the kind of person, words are nice, but to me, it's more of the experiences, right? The people that you meet, the relationships that you build. Y'all have traveled all over Europe, Japan, all across,
All over.
all
I
over.
mean,
And tell
yeah,
us
yeah,
about some of
literally.
those
Like, we were in
experiences.
Finland. I remember being in Helsinki and the sun never set. They're feeding us reindeer, and I'm like, what the heck are we doing here?
How was
You
it
know?
coming back home? And how was it coming back home and sharing those stories with your parents? We were here. I mean, maybe places that they've
Yeah, yeah,
never even
yeah.
heard of.
No,
What
it
was
was.
that like?
That's a great question. But I know what you're talking about. And it's said that it's not the destination that matters. It's the journey and the experience that you get from that. And whatnot. And I think it's a constant meeting point of destination or of interest. Things like that. But being able to share that with our mom and our dad, I can remember. I literally can remember our parents telling us, and they would look at us deep in the eye and go like, "Mijos, I know y'all, it's, the music and all this stuff, but because y'all are such smart people, y'all are so smart the way y'all talk, and the food y'all bring back home and show us these new foods and these new words and these new things." And I remember shedding a tear with my mom when she said that to me, and I remember my dad too going like, you know, "You guys are some savvy son of a guns, man." And we always accredited the creator first, and then we would always give them credit and go like, "Hey, we wouldn't be anything without what y'all made us first." And you know, it's just some places you go, you learn those things, and bringing them back home. To some people, it made them think that we think we're better than everybody else, and really we are. Not really. I'm
I
joking. Um, like, and even familia, and they'd be like, "Y'all changed" or whatever, and it's like, no, 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 no. See, we're exactly the same, and I still say it to this day. We're exactly the same. It's you that looks at us differently. Because we are exactly the same guys. I mean, like I said, I'm out here fishing right now. I've been fishing since I was 6, 7 years old. I'm still doing that. I still like we still like lowrider cars, and We still wear our Stacy's, and we still have our belief, and some things change with time, and I believe that that is important. I believe that evolution and evolving is something that is important. If you don't do that, you become stagnant, and there is no life in a stagnant pond. Only moving water creates life, and when you move like water, or like the air, then you remove that, that stagnant thing, and you become fresh every moment. And that's something that we try to give to all people whenever they are talking about our music or coming out to the shows, or and it was that's what I'm getting at with our parents telling us that we're, these words and these things and all this. And it's because, once again, the purpose was greater than ourselves. We're just the vessel, we're just the experience in a form that is an outward expression.
I honestly can vouch for yourself or for you when you say that you haven't changed. You know, my husband knows those only boys very well. He grew up with them. He says, I remember when they were little, huerquitos, and they were throwing rocks at the school bus. I remember that. I remember that. Do you remember that, Jojo?
I remember throwing rocks at a station wagon that rolled by when we lived in the trailer park, and I got in good trouble for that. I didn't mean to break the window,
Oh, it was
but
him.
I can remember what your brothers. Well, I'm sorry, what your husband's talking about. Him and the brothers and stuff. We all lived in Hermley, Texas,
Yeah.
and we basically shared the same calle, and we kicked the same tierra and things like that. And so it was the same for us whenever we saw them making it. We hadn't made it yet, but we'd known that they were taking off. We were like, "Watch out!" Michael and Ernie and everybody. They're. I don't know if they told you this story, but we played a show together in Big Springs, and that was around 1990,
1990, throw it away.
93 or 94. It was like I was like 13 or 14, and their dad got shot.
Oh my goodness. I don't know that story, but I'm going to ask.
Oh well, maybe I shouldn't be saying it,
No,
but
no, no, it's
it was
fine.
something that happened. It was something that we experienced where we came from. When you would go to the Vilas on Friday or Saturday or whatever at the VFWs or the American Legions, or at the little carnivals they had and stuff, it always seemed like the gente was always not, they weren't always just there to dance. There was always had to be some batallando. And for us, it was like we were happy to be on the other side of it, but that was an experience. Whenever it comes towards the stage or to the familia that's there, once again, we're still the same, and we'll still put you to the ground if we have to.
Andale, you have to. No, he had told me stories, growing up when, because they started little too, young on stage
Oh
at,
yeah.
at the honky tonks, at here and there, and they couldn't get off the stage
Yeah.
because they were so young, but they would see everything that would happen. So, they were aware
Absolutely.
of everything. And it was a little dangerous for y'all to be out there, but, y'all did
It is,
it.
and we talk all the time, us and Ernie and Michael and stuff. We talk all the time, and there may be some surprises coming everybody's way. So y'all keep your ears out, and you may be hearing something kind of special. So
I
you never
can't say
know.
that either. I don't. I know what it is, but we can't talk about that just yet. But I'm excited
Like I
about
said,
that.
it's a surprise.
That's a surprise. But what I want to talk about is, I know that you mentioned Willie Nelson growing up. That was, you all listened to him, and then you playing on stage with Willie Nelson. Not only Willie Nelson, The Who and Santana. And did y'all ever think that that was even going to happen? I mean, what went through your mind the very
No,
first time y'all were
hombre.
on stage with them?
No, hombre,
Hanging
not at
out.
all. Seriously, like, I mean, you hear the question you're asking. Come on, like, I know you got some heroes too. Do you ever think that you're gonna meet them, or that you would, maybe if you have already? No, but for cats like us, we were just three vato locos from the barrio that, we were lucky to get, like I said, frijoles and tortillas on the plate. And so when some other guys asked me some other interview, and they were like, "Hey, did you fanboy or whatever?" And I was like, "Nah, man, I never did." I was like, but it was absolutely unreal or surreal to see them looking and talking to me, or us playing together. It it doesn't seem real still, but because of the types of people that all these heroes of ours were, they made it real because they're very humble people and down to earth, and a lot of the classic greats like Willie and Ronnie and Carlos and Paul McCartney, and I'm not gonna keep name dropping, but just people we had met, they've all given us some words of wisdom, which is something our dad would always told us, and it was to remain as humble as you can, and don't forget where you come from. And that's one thing, one of the greatest things with it. We're super grateful from all these cats that we were able to share moments with and become part of musical history.
And I know that all, everything, all the lessons and everything, that all the advice that they've given you, I know that you're passing them down as well, not only with your interviews but with your audience and your fans. I understand that Henry's sons, they have a band. Tell us more about their band and the advice that you give them, which are your nephews, right?
Well, if you've heard about them, then you should know that Ringo's son also has a band. Henry's three boys have a band called the Cristeros, and Ringo's son has a band called Texican Legacy. And Ringo's actually, his son-in-law plays the bass in that band too. And they got a fantastic drummer, and they're writing all originals, And the same with Henry's boys, they write a lot of great songs, and I mean, yeah, being there, I'm just their Theo, but I try to tell them all the time. I go like, hey man, you guys just keep doing what you're doing, man, because that's what we did. Uh, One of the tough things about sharing the stage with them, though, is that they're stealing all our moves.
there's, there's still
I get up there and
everything.
I'm like, hey, I'm not that old yet. I still can do that. So don't do it.
What do you
No, in
guys?
serio though, they're really special, people. And aside from being musicians, they're I can't call them kids now. They're not kids anymore, but they're young men, and they're very special young men. And I think they have a lot to offer to the world as far as music goes. I mean, and even if they don't, as people, they're really great people, grounded well, raised well, and I too, I've got my five children, and they all know how to play a little and sing a little, and whether they're gonna have a band or start band, getting in bands or anything, or even doing solos, that remains to be seen. But like my daughter just sang at a baseball game in Midland, Texas. She just sang the national anthem there, and that's my oldest daughter, Iselia, and so she's definitely doing all she can to show that she's doing it herself as well too. But to get something like to be asked to sing the national anthem is pretty awesome.
Yes, that's a
We
hard
got to
song to
do it at
sing.
like the World Series and some basketball games and football games and stuff like that. But to see my own daughter doing that, like to me, it definitely it pulls at the heart chords.
Oh.
Seeing Henry's boys do it, seeing Ringo's boys do it, and another thing about them is they're opening shows with us, and they're getting their own shows, and they're working on music to put out to the rest of the world. So I give them all the blessings and that I can give them, to each one of them, as well as my own children, to have the strength and the ability to continue on.
Well, they have amazing role models, and I love to hear that because I love to hear that y'all's legacy will continue. How do you want to be remembered as an artist? What type of legacy do you? How do you want? Yeah, how do you want to be remembered? What type of artist do you want to be remembered as?
That's really funny you ask this question right now, because I'm not even kidding. For like probably the last 2 or 3 days, I have been literally thinking about the word legacy, and I have decided that when I'm asked this question from this point on in my time and in my life here on this earth, all I want to say to people is, I don't care if you remember me. I don't care if you remember my brothers. I don't care if you remember the name Los Lonely Boys. What I do care that people remember is that a real. Hello, did I freeze up again?
Yes, you froze up just a little bit. It's okay. You can keep going.
Okay, so what I was saying is, what I do want people to remember is that the Father exists, the Creator exists, and that I want people to know and remember that there were people in this day and age that put themselves last and put the Creator first and told people that. That's the only legacy that matters, is to pass down to the next generation and the generation after that, is that You're not as great as you think you are, and you really don't deserve a legacy. But what does is the creator of all things in existence, and for people to know that if you get a chance to be heard, it's that moment to do for the creator.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Talk to us, whatever you can say about any future projects that you have coming up as the Lonely Boys. I know you have some new things coming up. You can only say so much, but tell us as much as you can.
Right, right, right. I mean, I think it's the same with anybody that's in the entertainment business. We're always working on something. Um, to say what it is would sort of put a damper on it, but knowing who we are and what we are, you can definitely assure it's got to do with music. It's got to do with entertainment. It's got to do with visuals and things you can hear and things you can feel when it comes to how we share it with someone. But you can always bet that if Los Lonely Boys have life in their bones and breath in their lungs, that we're definitely going to be sharing some music. So y'all check out Resurrection. It's out now. Um, I think that it could be listened to a lot more by people and be talked about by a lot more people. We're not with a major label or anything like that. And so the more any of us can spread the word that we're still making music, the more it helps. So just get ready. Keep your ears open and your eyes on Los Lonely Boys because there's always going to be something coming.
And I know that you're going to be visiting Corpus soon, so we're looking forward to seeing you here in Corpus. If you want more information on
Oh,
that,
yeah.
we'll
We
have
love
that.
it out there.
I just,
Anytime we can be out there or anywhere in Texas, I mean, hombre, we're in our calle, we're in our backyard, and
especially if
so
you
we
like
can't wait to
fishing
get
like
out
you
there. I know
do.
we're doing South Padre too.
Yeah, you're going to bring your fishing poles. You're going to fish over here.
Well, when it's work, time to work, it's time to work. You know that, you know. If we had an extra day off, heck yeah, I'd be bringing them, but we don't have an extra day off there, so
Maybe. All
we'll
right.
be coming in to spread the word and spread some love.
Well, Jojo, I just want to thank you for being with us today again, and for you and and your brothers. We want to thank you as a fan for sharing your gift because the gift of music, that's what y'all have, and you're sharing it as a blessing. So thank you so much for sharing your gift with us, and we hope that you continue to do so. We're looking forward to all the new things and all the new projects and all the new blessings that you have coming your way. So thank you so, so much.
Muchas gracias por eso, and thank you so much for your time and for helping spread the word of Los Lonely Boys.
And now this I got from y'all. Let's see if you remember. Peace, love, and
Love and tortillas.
tortillas. Thank you so much, Jojo.
Bye bye.